In this video, we are reviewing our Thetford C223 cassette toilet. And before we get started, I want you to know that we do poop in our toilet. When we first started researching cassette toilet options, we were watching a lot of YouTube videos and everyone was saying that their cassette didn't smell, but every last one of them said, but we don't poop in our cassette. I'd really like to know where you are pooping, but we do. So this review is based off of us using this toilet full time for over a year, and we go number 2 and we flush our toilet paper. So if you've also been frustrated by watching other reviews, this video is for you. Why did we decide to go with a cassette toilet? When you live on a boat, you have a lot of conversations with other boaters about their toilet situation, because I think everyone is trying to make sure that they're not missing out on something that solves one of the biggest problems of live-aboard life, because there really aren't that many great options. So we've had a lot of conversations with folks over the year about composting heads, and we've learned quite a bit that made us think that that was not the way we wanted to go. Reason number 1 that we didn't want a composting toilet is that if you are someone who is prone to looser stools, that can cause a lot of issues with smells and needing additional substrate and the potential of poo getting in your pee jug. There's a lot of issues there. And when we were first doing our research for this toilet, I had yet to be diagnosed with colon cancer, and that cancer had not yet been removed yet. So this reason alone at that time completely ruled this out for us not to be gross. Reason number 2 is that as a woman, and many other women have this issue, they struggle with being able to separate their poo and their pee. And in a composting toilet, it's incredibly important that pee goes in the pee jug and poo goes in the composting side, and never the two shall mix. And I just didn't want to have to worry about that. The third reason was bugs. And I know if you're taking care of a composting toilet and you're cleaning it regularly, that bugs are typically not an issue, but I have seen enough of those like maggots in your composting head videos that it was just a hard no for me. And the last reason was cleaning a composting toilet looked absolutely miserable compared to dealing with emptying a cassette. The other options for van toilets, like the twisty bag ones, that just seemed really weird to make my pee solid. I just didn't want to deal with that. And they're really expensive for what they are. And the other option, which would have been like a more classic RV black tank, we just don't have space for in here. So that ruled out pretty much everything except a cassette toilet for us, which is how we ended up with this one. How did we end up with this model of cassette toilet? It was important to me that the toilet have as close to a household toilet feel as possible, and that pretty much led us towards the Thetford toilets. And Andy felt really strongly about being able to empty the cassette without having to drag it through our living quarters. He wanted to be able to pull it out of a door outside. So that basically left us with 2 options: the Thetford C223 and the Thetford C404. The 404 is massive, and we just don't really have the space. If it had a larger cassette, we may have gone that route, but they have the exact same cassette capacity. So that meant we landed on this bad boy right here. So now that you know why we picked this toilet, let's talk about how it worked. Now don't worry, this has been cleaned very thoroughly prior to filming this video. Pretty much a normal toilet seat. You sit on it like you would any other toilet seat. You do your business. No need to separate anything. Everything goes in the pot. The only thing that's a little different from a household toilet is that if you are just going to poo and you're not going to pee, you may want to add a little bit of additional water to the bowl beforehand just to make flushing a little bit easier. But I wouldn't do too much because you only have a 5-gallon capacity. So you don't want to be adding a ton of water for flushing purposes because of that. This particular model has a built-in flush in the back. Ours is not hooked up because we have this little bad boy, which is a handheld bidet, and we use that to kind of be able to flush more targetedly. I don't know if targetedly is a word, but we're using it today. So once you have done your business, get off the toilet, I highly recommend shutting the lid, and then you flip the lever back and forth. That will empty the bowl. So everything that's in there is just going to go bloop down into the cassette. You then can use your flush to flush everything down. And then again, I typically close it and do this. There's two reasons I close the lid. One is that it seems to help keep the smells down, because the only time you're really going to smell this is when you're opening that, because you're going to have some gases escape. But if you keep the lid closed, it tends to keep them down just a little bit. So I tend to do that. And then once at the very end, I'm going to put a little bit more water in the bowl at the bottom, just about up to the end of the black line. And that kind of works like a P-trap would in your house. So it keeps the gases from the cassette to be able to get through that water and out into your living compartment. That is key to this. Then you shut it and off you go. We leave ours closed 100% of the time. It does help cut down on smells. If you leave it open, you may have a little bit of a smell. Speaking of smells, really the only time other than like immediately after flushing that we smell the toilet is when it is extremely full. If I smell the toilet and nobody's flushed in a few minutes, I know we probably need to empty. And it's because once it gets up towards that line, it just for whatever reason starts venting into ours, especially if the windows are down. Cleaning the bowl itself, super easy. Thetford has a bubbling option for the bowl cleaner. I typically just use a tiny bit of bleach and just wipe it out once it's been like thoroughly rinsed out, and that's it. It's so easy. And the gaskets we've had no issues with gaskets or anything. So now we are going to go show you how you empty the cassette. Step number 1 of emptying the cassette is making sure that you get any of that water that's working as the P-trap into the cassette, because it will leak if you don't do that.
Next, we'll go ahead and open the door, push the 2 buttons. This one can lock, as you can see, but I don't concern myself with people stealing our shit. And you can slide the cassette out. There's a little latch. Keeps it in place. And we can now go dump it. Next is to find an appropriate place to dump it. There's lots of places to do that. Rest areas, truck stops, that kind of stuff. Campgrounds. You can dump it into a toilet, but you need to pay particular attention to splashback. On the front, there's obviously the lid, and then there's a vent button here. So once you start pouring, you can press the vent button and then it won't glug. Pushing the vent button. So next, what I'll normally do is I'll take this and flush it with water a few times and pour it out, probably around 3 times until it runs clear, and then we'll be done. You can pour the water back inside of here, but sometimes I like to slide open the hatch just so you can get inside and clean it out. Now it's important to do the shake, 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 so you get all the areas nice and clean. There's a few things here that you can take apart to clean more thoroughly. One is this vent assembly right here, and then the second one is right here. That is the little float level that tells it how full it is, and the vent assembly. Last step here is to add some of this holding tank treatment. This does 2 things. It helps with the smell. We have anecdotally tested this. We've tried it. We ran out, and then we got some, and it significantly is better. And the second thing is this helps keep all the waste liquid so you don't have like sloshing when you're pouring, if that makes sense. Don't think about that too much. The cap has built-in measurement like lines so you get the right amount. Give it a little slosh, and I left about an inch of water in here once I was done flushing it. So there's a little bit of water, and then there's the holding tank treatment. And then finally, stick it back in, and you're done.
While we have been super pleased with the toilet, there are a few cons you should know about. The first is that the tank level indicator doesn't always work, but once you've used it enough, you'll start to be able to kind of hear when it's getting full when you flush, so it's not a huge deal. The tank is pretty small, but you can purchase extra cassettes, and we've done that. So we have 2 of these 5-gallon cassettes now. We haven't had to use the second one very often, but when we have needed it, it has been great to have. With the 2 of us, we found that it lasts about 4 days. So if you're solo, you could expect to get quite a bit more than that. And like I said before, the only time we really smell it is when it's super full and the windows are down. So yeah, we love it. We highly recommend it. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them in the comments. And we will see you next time.